I'm Kara, and welcome to Soul Inspiring Business. I believe that all of us possess unique gifts and talents that allow us to serve the world and our own growth in the highest possible way. Our lives are an expression of our thoughts, beliefs, and actions. And here, we will explore businesses, thought leaders, and topics designed to inspire, helping propel your own growth so you can live your best and most purposeful life. Welcome to Soul Inspiring Business. Welcome back to the Soul Inspiring Business podcast. I'm your host, Kara Chaffin Donofrio, and thank you for being here. It's a solo show today, and actually, I'm recording fun, exciting thing for me with my new microphone, which is pink, and just it's all in the little things, right? That make you happy. I actually don't really like buying new things for the sake of buying them if something's already working, but I had traveled and I broke my other microphone because I took it with me to do a show on the road. So anyway, I got a pink one now. And lesson learned, don't leave the cord in the back if you're traveling. I know I almost did that with my laptop. So anyway, for anybody that just take those lessons from me. But getting into the show today, what I actually really wanted to talk about was really emotional intelligence and AI and how they kind of are working together and not. And it kind of came about because I just recently had to let go of an employee. She'd been with me about a year. In truth, I probably knew a lot sooner that it wasn't the best fit, but I, tried to make it work and it didn't. And in the end, it was really what kind of the straw that broke the camel's back was this inability to have a real emotional intelligence of how to respond and communicate with people. And so that's what kind of prompted this episode. And then I heard this fantastic podcast episode. It was by, if you've ever listened to it, the Diary of a CEO podcast. And they were he was interviewing Simon Sinek. And they were talking about this, AI and how for all the things that it does for us and the ways that I use it to create efficiency, of course, as well. What it's also doing is almost conditioning ourselves to out of our own soul codes. It's sort of conditioning us into this, mechanical type voice. I mean, I know friends that have, I was with someone who was having a difficult conversation with an ex and kind of using ChatGPT to figure out how to respond to this person, right? And so on one level, that's really great because it's helping you. But on the other, does it also, and to play devil's advocate, does it also kind of condition ourselves out of our own soul code, of our own creativity, of all the things that, make us uniquely us, you uniquely you. And one of the things that in this podcast episode, Simon was saying is he said, it's funny because it used to be that I remembered everybody's phone numbers. I knew, all of them by heart. And now, because I've got an iPhone that stores all the phone numbers in there, I don't have to remember phone numbers, and I don't. And isn't that true? I mean, it's actually really funny. Even my husband, which I do know his phone number, but there have been a few times where I've second guessed myself because I don't have to remember it. It's just in the phone. And, that in particular, that little thing nugget that he shared, just kind of caught me to think, wow, are we becoming so dependent on this tool that we're actually losing some of the humanness and losing some of the ability to connect on a true soul level versus through this, incredible technology. But it is just that. It's technology. It's not human. It doesn't come from God. It's not, it doesn't have a soul code within it. And so is there a conditioning of humans that we're maybe not aware of? Or, how can we make sure that we also have a really incredible emotional intelligence? And how do we hone that and make sure that, because I think that skill, what I see is that that skill is becoming less and less sometimes, especially in the younger generations. And so, how do we teach that? How do we make sure that we ourselves don't condition ourselves out of some of the beauty that's within us, that knows how to respond and knows how to take social cues and can respond in a human way to what we're receiving? Because I know that even though I'm sure, my friend that was using the, you know, chat GPT to communicate, so that she said the right thing and that she said it in a way that sounded, better than maybe how she might have said it. On the other hand, is there something missing in that? Is there a humanness that gets lost where we become so dependent on this um I don't know, robot, on this technology, that we then lose, at some point, do we lose our ability to communicate at all without this other thing here to help guide us? It's interesting. I've even noticed sometimes for myself, because a lot of times I'll use it to get ideas, or I'll get a first draft even of maybe an email that I want to put together. But I mean, sometimes it sounds better than what I could have ever put together. And then I think, gosh, am I losing a piece of what I want to say, that maybe, as we've talked about on the show, kind of opening up the top of your head into all that is, and also just opening yourself up to all that is, and allowing you to receive guidance from God, from the bigger, more expansive part of you. Are we a little bit lost when we start returning so much to that technology? So anyway, so that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. And I think that when I think about emotional intelligence, the emotional intelligence really is being able to understand your own emotions and recognize and understand someone else's emotions, and having awareness really of those. And then really being able to sort of read a situation, to know how to respond in the highest possible way for the moment. And funny thing about moments, I was actually talking to my kids the other day about, they play soccer and they're pretty obsessed. And so we were talking about a conversation their coach had had with them about, how important the technical skills are in the game, because anybody can boot a ball, but it really does require the best of the best need to learn the technical skills. Just like in any sport, it's all about the reps that you put in so that you're ready for the moments. And so, same thing with this. I think that on some level, we're practicing our emotional intelligence. We're practicing how to learn and communicate and respond to other humans all the time. And so it's about being ready for the moment, and being ready for the moment in a human way, because there are some things that uh, technology, that robot, that whatever, artificial intelligence that's out there, is never going to be able to pick up exactly what a human can. At least I don't believe they can, at least at this point. And I don't believe that, well, they don't have a soul. So there is an inherent difference. And what makes us unique is the ability, again, to operate with soul, connect soul to soul with somebody. It's why it's the human, when you look at great art, I mean, it's not all perfect, because what's perfect about it is the imperfections. It's the human imperfection and flaws that make it more perfect. There's a reason that people pay more for handmade pottery, or a picture, that you buy, that you looks slightly different because it's slightly flawed, because a human made it with human hands. And I think that's really the essence that we get to to experience and live in life and also in business when it comes to responding to people and the human connection. And the more gifted we are in that language of communication and, emotional intelligence and reading the situation, I think that you will be always in demand in the labor market because there is something about that artificial intelligence can't do. And so the first, I think, rule about when we start to think about emotional intelligence, I think one of the first things to understand comes directly from one of my favorite books called The Four Agreements. And it is that don't take anything personally. Don't take anything personally. And what I love about that agreement is that it basically is saying that everyone is coming at a situation from all their own biases, from all the other stuff that they've had, whether or not you believe in past lives or now, all the baggage that they've carried, they're bringing to that situation. And so I always think when there's a conflict or when something arises, you know, you read the situation, and if that person is stressed or barks at you or, you know, says something that's inappropriate or mean spirited, you know, you have to kind of have compassion for that's not about me, that's about them. And I think, especially in sales and communication and business, it's really important to come at it from that perspective to say, wherever you're going into a communication or a conversation, that whatever they're bringing has other stuff that they've brought with it. And so, kind of detangling to say, well, you can't take anything personally. You really have to approach it from how do I help? How do I get really curious about what's going on with this situation, with what this person has going on, where I can step in and I can figure out with emotional intelligence, with the ability to see, feel, and know on some level what needs to happen next. And it's simple kind of things, I think, as we look at, well, how do you cultivate this? How do you teach emotional intelligence? Because it's funny, as I was, I let go of this person and I was thinking to myself, well, gosh, I felt like I really tried. I really tried to teach how to respond to people. And, some people learn at different paces, at different levels. And but, I think the first thing to think about when you're going into a situation or when you're having a conversation is first just really taking inventory of the first impressions of what you see. Actually, more, not even what you see. What do you feel? Because typically you're going to get a feeling about when you walk. I mean, you get a feeling when you walk into a room. I think many of us can understand that there have been times where we've walked into a room and the energy just felt off. It just felt weird. And then by contrast, you walk into a room and you can't even explain it, but you just feel like uplifted and inspired and it's amazing, right? And so the first thing to take inventory of is, how do you feel? What are the intuitive hits that you're picking up about that person, the situation? And it can often be felt. And then the second piece is, what do you observe? What are you observing around you with your eyes, with your ears? What's happening? What are they saying? But more importantly, what are they not saying? So what are, you know, nonverbal communication is much more effective, or can say a lot more than what words can say. Because somebody can be saying something, oh, you're great, you're all this. But if they're standoffish, if they're pushed back, if they're, there's clearly a disconnect between what's being said and what's not being said. And so many times the nonverbal cues are so much more helpful than what somebody is actually saying. So when you come into a situation, again, taking inventory of how do you feel energetically, really just, does it feel good? Does it feel bad? And then also, how does that person look? How are they standing? How are they posturing? How do they feel defensive? Do they feel at peace and at ease? And so, all of these cues can give you cues as how to respond, how to sort of mirror what's happening with that other person. And, if there's a defensiveness, knowing that up front, maybe knowing to give them a little bit of space, having the emotional intelligence to say, okay, well, it seems like they need a little bit of space right now, which I'm going to give it to them. I'm also going to get curious as to I'm going to try to desensitize in some way what's happening, So, um, maybe it's a situation that, you need to read and think, how do I kind of find common ground with this person? How do I find something that maybe we could talk about that doesn't have to deal with the actual subject of what we're talking about? To find some way of human connection, to find some way. It's funny, when I first started in sales, I was working for a builder, and I pretty much did an open house for 4 years straight because I worked in a model home. And very quickly, one of the things that we learned was how to find common ground with people. Because naturally, if you think about yourself, when you go shopping, do you really want to talk to the salesperson? Well, I can tell you, I definitely don't. In fact, I often will try to avoid the person or go the other way. And I sell homes. I mean, I'm in a sales profession, right? But um, what I found is that people, they don't really like salespeople. They don't really want to be around them. And again, I'm sort of living proof, but at the same time, as soon as I need something, I want them there. I want, then I raise my hand and then I want them there. And then I want them to guide me. Right. And so that's where, but we were taught, I digress. We were taught, how to read somebody pretty quickly and find some sort of common ground. Now, the easiest and probably like a default, if there's absolutely nothing else that you can talk about, is weather, because weather is sort of a non-threatening type, opening conversation with somebody. Oh gosh, can you believe this rain? It just sort of opens up a conversation with someone in a very non-threatening way. It could be if they're wearing a particular color, or they have, a logo of a particular sports team, or you see something where there's some type of connection, again, not related to what it is that you're actually discussing, because it gets you into a place of, oh, okay, well, they're just like me. Or they can see you then from the standpoint of not as, somebody trying to selling them something, um, if you're in the medical profession, somebody trying to, tell you what's wrong. I mean, you can apply it to all areas of business, right? It's not just sales, but it is that ability to find human connection is really what you're doing. And you're looking for cues into, how do I connect? How can I get into this person's world in some way so that they know that I'm not there to, to offend them. I'm there to help, right? I'm there to be there for them if they need it. And so, or to solve a problem, or to discuss maybe a difficult conversation, So how do you do that? Um, and then I think the other piece, again, speaking back to the sports analogy, of the getting ready for the moments, I think it's also really important that whatever kind of craft you have, if it's real estate, like, know your stuff, know it backwards and forwards, know what you want to talk about. And not from a script perspective. There's a ton of real estate coaches and they all sell these scripts of, this is what you need to say. And if somebody gives you this objection, and you've probably all heard these like corny little lines that people will give. And so I'm not really a believer in like memorizing a script, but I do think it's important to have an understanding of how to respond and communicate in an effective way with people. of how to ask really good questions. And before any meeting, thinking of, well, what are some of the questions that we're going to talk about? What are some of the things that might come up, and how might I respond to them from a standpoint or from a point of curiosity? And I think that that's where the you know you're not getting ready to get ready, you're getting ready for the moments to serve. You're getting ready for the moments to create an impact in somebody's life. And I've never really been the type of person that believes in like selling somebody something for the sake of selling it. But I do think that, you know, that a no is never really a no. It's just a no until a situation changes. So how do I stay in communication? How do I stay able to help that person through whatever it is that they need? And when you do that, when you connect with people in a way where they feel it, where they feel the genuineness of you, the the genuineness of wanting to serve on some level, on wanting to help them through a situation, of saying to them, listen, like whatever you're going through, we've got this together. I'm here to help. And if I'm not the best person, I'll get you somebody else. No problem, because in the end of the day, I want to help whatever you're going through, right? And so I think that when you can, like that human connection, when you get to those layers, then you are an invaluable force in the workforce, because it's a skill, and it's how you make people feel and how you leave them. And when you make, what's that quote? People don't remember what you do, but they will remember how you made them feel. And we've all, you know, felt that before, where we can look back on a memory and say, oh my gosh, like I just remember I was in such a bad way in that particular moment. This person came in and just made me feel like I got it. Or this one conversation I had just changed my whole outlook on whatever it is. And they may not even remember the person's name or exactly what they look like, but they remember the situation of how that person made them feel, right? And I think that's the gift that we have the opportunity to be for each other. And that's the gift of having strong emotional intelligence that this artificial intelligence is never going to replace, because it doesn't have soul. And so I think that when people are scared, because I think right now happening in the world, there are these two worlds diverging. And for those that choose, there's a choice, right? To choose to move forward in fear, or to choose to move forward in love. And I don't say that from like a Pollyanna perspective to say, oh, well, everything's roses and you're going to move forward in love and love, love, love. Like, no, what I really mean by that is you can choose fear. You can choose to operate in scarcity, that the world is against you, that everything's changing, that you're not going to be successful. Or you can choose to move forward in love, knowing and trust really that you are being led into the highest next evolution of you. And there is a response needed on your part, right? So if, for example, I actually was just asked a question in a new quarterly newsletter about navigating change. And it's interesting because I've been through many, many iterations of change in my own career, all mostly in real estate, but also, the podcast has evolved as in an incredible way. And there's been, and I lived through 2008, which, was a very difficult time financially for a lot of people. And what was really interesting, and speaking specifically of real estate, is that at that time, there were people that didn't do very well. And then there were people that recognized that there were still opportunities in all times. And there were some agents that realized and recognized that there was a great opportunity and a need for people to short sell their homes, or banks that had a lot of REO or real estate owned properties, that banks had a lot of properties that they needed to sell. And, there was a need for that. And so they recognized needs and knew how to then pivot and shift and evolve into the right response for the right time. Right. And so it doesn't mean that it wasn't challenging. And I think when we look at the world right now, there has been a lot of uncertainty, but I also think that there again is this opportunity for us to move forward in choosing abundance, choosing gratitude, and asking for the guidance of where you're supposed to go next, of who's supposed to be coming into place for you, and being open to the opportunities. I think that's what I mean when I say you choose more to move forward in trust and in love, that there is always a path for you that's opening and continuing to evolve and grow into this next version of you. And again, it doesn't mean that moving forward in that way may not have, it's not from a Pollyanna standpoint, doesn't mean there won't be hard days, but that you're choosing to see the opportunity and the gift of the moments. I mean, thinking back even to COVID, obviously a really scary time for a lot of us. And I have thoughts on that now. But I think that thinking back to that time, we look at all the ways that fear has been manufactured by the powers that be for centuries, for eons of time, right? This is not it's like this is the flavor of the decade, right? But there's always been elements of manufactured fear. And especially when we buy into the narrative of media, which is where a lot of the fear gets pushed out, then it can be easier to get caught into a spiral. So what I would say is be really strong in your foundation of what you're allowing into your space, to create boundaries for yourself, to operate, again, coming back to emotional intelligence, to be aware of your own emotions, of how you're going to protect those, and how you're going to move in the world and respond to the opportunities that are presenting themselves to you. How are you going to listen to those that show up? How are you going to listen and be aware of the people that may need your help, that are leading you in a certain direction, right? So I think that that probably wraps up our conversation today, but I just think this is something that will continue to be probably a big topic of conversation, as it should be, because I think, we need to be careful on how much we rely on an artificial form of intelligence so that we don't get conditioned out of what is unique to us, so that we continue to still train our brain for creativity, for listening to the whispers that are all around you. Whispers of the universe, whispers that are guiding you into the next change, that's intuitive wisdom, that if you only rely on artificial intelligence, I think you will miss the boat. And it's always a choice, right? Always a choice on how we want to evolve and stay in maybe a more 3D way of looking in the world versus a 5D way of looking in the world. So with that, I wish you a beautiful day, evening, weekend, whenever you're listening to this. I'm sending you lots of love, and until next time. Loved being here with you today and would love to connect with you more over on Instagram. My handle is linked to the show notes, or you can just type in @Kara Chaffin Donofrio. And I have something special for you as a free gift, my dynamic life journal. This special book has the power to really help you live a soul-inspired life. Go to freegiftfromkara.com. Easy to remember, freegiftfromkara.com. Until next time, beautiful people, sending all my love.